Our first speaker is a professor and founding chair of the Department of Rehabilitation Science at George Mason University. He's also a Catherine Worthingham Fellow and Mary McMillan Award winner. Welcome to the stage right now, Dr. Andrew Guccione.
Thank you, everybody, for inviting me here tonight. I'm going to talk really quick because I accepted the challenge from Dr. Dieter to give you 7 weeks of lectures in 10 minutes. So I will warn you, the good news is you can either listen to me or read, or both, because my slides are extremely redundant, as am I. And to prove to Dieter that this can be done, I'm starting now. So oh, you wait. Okay, so the title of my talk is, thank you. It goes something like this. Optimization of movement is the science moving on without us. As a former member of the first task force on the movement system, I'm here to tell you we really missed the boat. And last January, we were able to publish a paper in physical therapy attacking and hopefully demolishing the movement system as the basis for diagnosis. And tonight I want to pick up on that theme with looking at it for the notion of clinical practice as completely inadequate and besides the science. So what APTA said was the physical therapy profession promotes the movement system as the foundation for optimizing movement to improve the health of society. Wrong. The movement system is the Shut up. That was 1 minute. Okay, the movement system is the integration of body systems that generate and maintain movement at all levels of body function. I have no idea what that means. It's tautologous. It says movement is as movement does, and I don't want to think about movement at all levels of bodily function. Human movement is a complex behavior within a specific context and is influenced by social, environmental, and personal factors. That's the only thing that they got right. The problem is this: there is no the movement system. There are multiple ways in which the individual adapts and self-organizes movement systems to accomplish various tasks under specific environmental conditions. And the ultimate goal of rehabilitation, as I've been trying to argue for the last 10 years or so, the ultimate goal is to enhance human performance, which is the individual's ability to perform goal-directed and personally desired tasks and activities under natural conditions. There are two paradigm shifts that you need to know about. Boy, my phone is really annoying me. Shut up already. Cancel. Okay. The first paradigm shift is the change between compensatory and recovery approaches. And in a compensatory approach, you really are trying to either remediate a body part, substitute a body part, alter the task, or alter the environment. That's what we've been doing for about 75 or 100 years. However, recovery approaches to rehabilitation seek to leverage, and this is important, this will be on the test, experience and use-dependent adaptability by exposing the individual to task-specific stressors that can produce relatively permanent changes in behavior under defined environmental conditions. Couple that with the second paradigm shift, which actually started everywhere else but physical therapy as long ago as 1987, which really draws our attention that goal-directed movement, again, here's this word, behavior, should focus on the functions of an action, not on the specific anatomical units involved, because an act is functionally specific, its variability is in reference to the function, and it fulfills that function rather than preserving any particular aggregation of body parts, which is exactly why APTA chose an anatomical definition of the movement system, which, strangely enough, is a physiological process. So I apologize profusely in the Macmillan for in the 90s really pushing that in the person-environment interface, which is the interface of disability, that there was a unique relationship between activity limitation and impairment, and instead have recognized that there are these intervening steps of actions which are then translated into tasks which then are comprised in an activity, and that is the area of human performance mediated through movement. And that is why I've been arguing for 10 years that it actually is the case that we change the world when we change human performance mediated by movement. However, the rest of our field has lagged behind. So really what we have is a situation where we're really considering exercise as remediation, with most of it on the body, here known as the organism, which is the word that everybody else uses except physical therapists, primarily addressed to change the organism to impact impairments, and then with a putative impact on activity limitation. Sometimes we throw in, because we hang out with the OTs, both task and environment as part of our analysis, but that actually is absolutely critical. And with that combination of I change the person, I change the task, I change the environment, mainly by manipulating impairments, you can see that we're deep in the realm of impairment-based therapy. And we generally ignore the realm of actions and tasks, at least as physical therapists, thank you OTs, where human performance really takes place. So, having done this for almost 100 years and having decent success, modest success, but not moving beyond it, it's time to start thinking differently. So when your own literature doesn't give you the answers, you go looking somewhere else. We went to actually the elite performance literature. How do elite performers learn what they do? And we basically posed this question: what if walking were your sport and we trained walking using the same principles used to elicit elite performance in competition? Now here's where it really moves fast. So in performance-based analysis, you're not concerned about changing impairments. You're looking at how successfully does an individual manage at any given moment the complex integration of systems pertinent to planning, initiating, executing, and sustaining the actions and tasks that lead to accomplishing the functional activity in the real world and in real time. And therefore, a performance-based approach, which we don't use broadly in physical therapy, changes the focus from treating impairments to coaching behaviors. It's a huge difference, folks. Okay, now we're based in systems theory, where movement is emergent. The constraints of any system required to move exercises an effect on every other system required to move, and this changes rapidly over time. Movement is not regarded as a problem, it is intended as a solution to a problem, and variability to movement is not a consequence of error, but rather the individual's attempt at active problem solving. Therefore, the observed behavior is not only the result of the injury, but the organism's attempt to compensate or hopefully adapt. The recovery of function cannot be studied outside of the context of how individuals are accomplishing their functional tasks in specific environments while executing the movement solution. And here's the real kicker. There are multiple equivalent solutions, some more successful than others, but they are equivalent solutions depending upon how the individual manages the trade-off between bioenergetics and mechanical efficiency. Moving right along. Therefore, the motor learning becomes the source of recovery of function. And here it is. It comes from Shumway and Cook. I didn't make this up, so it's there. We've just been ignoring it. Motor learning leading to recovery is a search for a solution from the interaction of the individual with the task in the environment, and it is a set of processes that result in permanent change. Now, to Koch's adaptation, there are some things you need to know. There is task specificity, progressive overload, and practice variation. So guess what? Task specificity sounds exactly what it is. It targets a specific task and promotion of the changes, particularly with respect to biomechanics and bioenergetic demands. Now, progressive overload is something we know a lot about, usually because we increase volume, load, intensity, power, or complexity, with the emphasis really being on the first three, but separately and not combined in the task at hand. And that is a major mistake. You heard it from me first. Okay. The other major mistake is this, the variability of motor learning. Motor learning is critical to delivering on our ability to be the movement experts. Unfortunately, motor learning plays the least role in our care. And therefore, we tend to do some structured motor learning, but rarely do we have time to do unstructured motor learning, which has led us down this primrose path of thinking that there are dysfunctional movement patterns based upon norms. In our clinical research, we do not refer to anything as normal movement. There is typical movement, and there is successful and unsuccessful movement, and if you make that mistake, you get a bad grade from me. Okay. So is it impairment-based versus performance-based? Now, there are criteria, which I just list here, so you know that there's something to go read. Please go read. And it depends upon the task, the variability of the task, and the environment. And this does not need to be an either-or, because, in fact, we can combine both of these things, and we need to combine both of these things in treatment. Because basically, what we have is a situation where you guys got the idea about exercise as remediation, but motor learning is essential as a behavioral intervention, and that is what's been missed. Motor learning is a behavioral intervention, and if it's done correctly, folks, human performance mediated through movement as a behavioral intervention will actually feed back upon the constraints of organism, task, and environment, which would then allow us to develop a series of successful solutions and what we call a behavioral repertoire. For those of you who are into attractor states, that's where this whole literature comes in, and if you haven't heard that term, you should, because it's been being used for about 20 years in everybody else's literature. So I'm moving right along. So the key questions on intervention: is there specific task specificity, progressive overload, and practice variability delivered with the correct dosage and appropriate dosing schedule to promote adaptation, not impairment remediation? And here's my answer: possibly, but even more probably not. Task specificity is likely adequate if it's present. Progressive overload is probably not sufficiently challenging to balance the demands of metabolic economy and mechanical efficiency to get to a more desirable attractor state. And practice variability is generally shunned as encouraging the wrong way to move, and the training schedule is too short to allow for adaptation and essential recovery periods. Now, just to say, I do put my time where my mouth is. We do have a training program. We did this in spinal cord injury, published on that. I hope to have the papers start coming out this summer on Parkinson's disease. This will give you an idea. We do 12 weeks of movement drills, 24 sessions, 60 minutes a session. It's all based on the gait cycle. That's all we do. Full body weight. We keep your heart rate at least 60% of your adjusted max. Each session has a single emphasis, but notice that it's not all forward walking, because patients tell us that therapists rarely ask them, not you guys, because you're all terrific therapists, but therapists in general don't ask them to ever walk backwards, sideways, or take a turn. And we progress them every 8 weeks by manipulating all of those characteristics in a particular pattern. Now, here's the Fox advantage, because you can't get that done under normal reimbursement. Thank you, Heather, for being here. Fox actually has an advantage, and I think we have some data on this in the study that I was lucky enough to do with Will Dieter and another colleague this summer. You have a business model in place that allows motor learning to take place. Whether you're using it for motor learning is why I'm here to scramble everybody's brains, at least a little, to try to say, are you getting the most out of this other business model that you have besides the therapist-based business model? You notice I'm kind of looking over there, sorry. You have the personnel who can deliver performance-based motor learning training, and it's highly reproducible, and it's easily transportable, and where we found an advantage from the Fox Optimal Living program, I think it's there, and that is about 10 minutes, so thank you, and come back for the other 6.5 weeks of lectures.